Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. We come to you on the back of a disappointing 2-0 defeat to Brentford. But before we jump into that, let's see who we've got on the show today. We welcome Joe. Joe, my friend, how are you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. Bit ill, but we move. It's fine. And after yesterday, not much a better mood, but yeah, excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're excited, Joe. That is all I ask. And we also welcome back Kurtis, friend. Kurtis, my friend, how are you doing?
I am groovy like a drive-in movie, my friend. I'm happy to be here with you chaps. Looking forward to a good conversation about the ball of foots.
Yes, the football. So, chaps, let's start it off. Did you see that ludicrous display last night? That's an IT crowd reference for
It
anyone out
is a very good one.
there. Very good and very apt. But before we get into that ludicrous display, we have to talk about the news that came out this week that Enock Mwepu, at the age of 24, has been forced to retire after being diagnosed with a hereditary heart condition. Joe, really, really sad news for Enock. He's come out and he said his thanks to the Zambia FA. He's come out and said thanks to Brighton. He's also said that this is not the end of him in football, but just how devastating is this news that a man in such a promising career at the age of 24 has had to retire.
Yeah, obviously it's devastating for him and his family. You know, a guy from a little town in Zambia reaching the Premier League, as it was said on the t-shirts in his statement. But I think we have to be glad that it was found and it's nothing overly, too serious that we could see another situation of what we have seen in the past with players with heart conditions. So thankful that the doctors have found that. But yeah, it's a guy that it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And over the last 24, 48 hours, I've been absolutely blessed with the Zambian community, filling up my notifications on Twitter, and they're just such a wonderful bunch of people, and nothing but positivity towards a guy that has given so much to their country at such a young age. And as you say, he says it's not the end of Enock Mwepu. And that's testament to him because he's going to bounce back so much stronger. And what a fantastic mentality to have. And I hope that he plays a part in and around our club because he's certainly a guy that I don't want to see leave us, even if he's not playing for us. We've had the comments of why not Brighton in the Champions League? Why not aim for the top four? And they're fantastic comments to have in and around our football club. And yeah, we sort of say it tongue in cheek on the podcast, but to have a player come out and say that why not, it makes you sort of think that that's the mentality you want. And I'm devastated, but also happy for him that he can now go into a new chapter with a clean bill of health and go again.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously the main thing to come out of this is, whilst it is very, very sad that his health hasn't been compromised further by it being undiagnosed. We've, as you say, Joe, we've seen players in the very recent past suffer cardiac arrests on the pitch. This has led to some players losing their lives. His family is far more important. His life is far more important. So as devastating as it is for Enock, as devastating it is for the fans, his health has to come first. And Kurtis, it was a really touching tribute, to Enock last night when the players came out for the warm up wearing those t-shirts. The club shop as well were putting all the shirts with Mwepu number 8 on the back, and there was also some classy comments from Frank in the pre-match program. Where he dedicated the first few paragraphs, I believe, of his 200th match in charge of Brentford to Enock Mwepu. Those gestures are really lovely. What are your view on how the club have gone about showing that respect to Enock?
I mean, incredibly classy. I think, he is someone that you can just tell has a really infectious attitude, who's always smiling, always has something positive to say, always seems very happy. And I'm glad that we're repaying him for his, service. Admit it, it was a sort of a shorter time, but still, he had quite the impact on a lot of people. Clearly, you can see also on social media some of the players what they put out. It was really lovely to read those things too. So it was just nice to see the club show their signs of respect the way they did. And I know this sometimes gets thrown about a bit, but the once a seagull, always a seagull thing, it definitely rings true. He's part of this incredibly rich family, now and forever. So
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to also just point out one particular thing that I thought was really nice was Basuma's Instagram post. I thought that was really nice, really classy from Basuma there. So yeah, big up for Biz for putting that out.
And Pat Sandaka put a nice post out
Yeah.
as well, because they came up together. I thought that was really a nice read. So
yeah, it's been lovely to see how the community have got behind him. And as you say, let's hope that he gets all the support he needs from the club moving forward. And it was also, Joe, really nice to hear the chants for the first 10 minutes of the game. The fans just constantly chanting Mwepu's name. So that was really nice, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's nothing less than what he deserves. He's, as Curtis said, a short period of time at our football club, but he's given us some unbelievable memories. Two that stand out for me, obviously the Liverpool goal, and the display at Arsenal, and that they'll be remembered by the fans for as long as we go on. And so we have to thank him for those memories. And I feel like doing what we did at Brentford yesterday, and doing what we're planning to do at the next couple of home games as well, it's the least we can do. I wish there was more we could do for him, but all we can do is stand up and show our support. And that's why I plugged on Twitter. Everyone buy a Zambian flag and bring it to the Amex and just make it a sea of Zambian flags, and hopefully he'll be watching, and he can see how much he meant to us. Nothing more to say on that, because it's heavy, but
yeah, nicely said, Joe. And let's just make sure that when we play our home game against Forest, that we make a lot of noise for him, and let's make, as Joe says, a sea of Zambian flags if we can. So Curtis, let's talk about the game itself. Then let's start by just talking about the starting 11, if we may. Unchanged. Were you surprised by that? I think the only tweak was that instead of playing a back three, we played a back four. It was very much a 4-2-3-1, I thought, for most part of the game. But were you surprised? We talked on our last podcast about trying to get Matoma in there. Were you surprised at all by the starting 11? Would you have started Matoma?
I wasn't particularly surprised by that starting 11. I still think that it's going to take a little bit of time for Roberto to fully see out his sort of vision. So I feel like he might need to see our strongest starting 11, play a few games before he can make some sort of big decisions on potential changes and things. But like we've discussed in the group chat, privately, like it's hard to say like, oh, let's just put Matoma in, because then who are you gonna drop for him? Considering you've got people like Purvis, who's been playing pretty good. I thought he had an okay game yesterday and things like that. So it's tough. It's just tough to make everybody happy, essentially.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Joe, I mean, I put it to the group last night. When a new manager comes in, do you think consistently changing the personnel at your disposal in games is the best way to find out who your best starting 11 are?
Well, no, because in the Premier League, it can go wrong in the blink of an eye. You could have Lionel Messi, Erling Haaland, Ruben Diaz, and all the best players in the world under the sun. And if you're playing a Premier League game, it can go wrong. That's the simplicity of it. And as Curtis says, it's about finding some consistency in the starting 11 that have been the sort of the mainstays, even when Graham Potter was around. and then making the decision. Who has been working hard enough in training, who has shown enough off of the bench. Matoma, for me, is probably the only one that's shown enough off of the bench to be like, yes, he should start. The other guys still have a bit of, proving to do for me. And it's good that we've got a backup of players that are itching to get onto the pitch and prove what they can do, because I'm sure that if the players that are starting aren't hello cat, for the audio listeners, there's been a cat on screen, so hello. For the so it's going to be interesting to see whether De Zerbi takes the stance of, right, you're not playing well enough. I'm getting distracted by Kurtis' cat. It's fine, he can stay. If De Zerbi says you're not good enough to start, you're getting dropped, who comes in and who takes that chance? That was very all over the place, thanks to Kurtis' cat, but
hashtag blame Kurtis's cat.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about this.
It's very in keeping with the personality of a cat to do that. So anyone who owns a cat, anyone has a cat, you'll know exactly what's going on. So let's start by chatting about how deep we were playing, Kurtis, because Brighton were playing very deep, as is the De Zerbi way, and Brentford were pushing very high up the pitch to prevent Sanchez and co playing it out from the back. A few people, I'm going to say this, a very vocal minority, have said that De Zerbi has been found out already. Do you agree with that statement, Kurtis? Has De Zerbi been found out?
Reactionary football fans? What? Seriously? What? We have like 2 games that aren't amazing, scoring 4-5 goals. Cat, what do you do? I have to put the cat down. I'm sorry.
This is proper tickle me.
There we go.
World class content again. We love it.
Let's just re-edit this. Yeah, okay.
No, it's fine. This can stay in.
What was the question? I've forgotten now.
I said a vocal minority of football fans have suggested that Roberto De Zerbi has been found out already.
That's so silly. We need to give him time. I mean, he's going to make mistakes. He's not played with this team that much. It's so silly, man. But like, football fans can be so incredibly fickle sometimes. Because next week, on Tuesday, we could, hypothetically, batter Nottingham Forest and people would be like, oh, De Zerbi ball, yeah. And it's like, just stop it. Just stop. You need some help. Yes, I just think we need to give him more time and we need to just trust it, trust the process.
Yeah, we certainly do. And we're going to talk a bit more about reactionary football fans a bit later, because I've got some very choice words to say. But Joe, there is a certain element of risk versus reward with the way that Roberto De Zerbi wants to play. We play it around the back. We invite that pressure. But I think it was very evident yesterday that there was a lot of space that could be utilized if and when we break the press. One of my criticisms last night was that when we did eventually break the press, we were too slow in transitioning the ball up to the Brentford end. What did you make of that tactic? And was the risk worth the reward?
It wouldn't unmute me. As you say, it's too slow. The pivot that people are talking about of McAllister and Caicedo weren't sort of involved as much as I thought they should have been. Whether that was their fault or whether that was down to the tactics, I don't know, and I'm not here to single out players at all. But I think as we're just going to keep repeating ourselves because it's a new way of playing. The players have played the system for probably only 2 games, to be fair, because I feel like he operated a Graham Potter system against Liverpool. Maybe there was sort of 20 minutes worth of De Zerbi ball. So as Kurtis says, it's really, really going to take time, and we need to find out what players in our squad are the best players to be playing his system, and And whether that be people getting drops, I'm all for it, because I want my football club, I want my football team to win games. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a slow process, and that's sort of shown in the performance yesterday. Very slow, as Aaron and yourself pointed out whilst the game was going on. When you've got Pascal Gross, I love Pascal, absolutely adore him. But if you need pace in the side, Pascal isn't your man. And you've got, I thought Leandro Trossard went a little bit missing, and just from the keeper to right through to the striker, things weren't clicking. Nothing was happening. And I feel like that will come with time. I said I didn't want to pick out players, but I just did that. So hypocritical of me, I know. But it's going to take time.
I wouldn't say it's hypocritical, Joe. I mean, I think what we said at the start of the show before we started recording, listeners, is that we're not here to be either side of the spectrum, if you like. We're not here to be like, oh, everything's fine, we were brilliant, we just didn't get our take our chances. Oh, we're also not here to be like, oh yeah, we're rubbish, we're going down, blah 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 blah. We're not here to do that. We're here to give you a balanced opinion. Yes, we will critique players, as has always been the remit on Albion Obsessed. We will critique performances, but we're not here to slate people off and call them frauds or whatnot. Because I don't think the performance last night was dreadful. I've certainly seen worse, and I've seen worse this season. But things weren't clicking. And so let's talk about how, we did play some good football in that first half, and we did have our chances. I mean, Kurtis, it's fair to say, again, Danny Welbeck probably should have scored. Estupinian putting a lovely cross, and Welbeck, he almost didn't react until the ball was literally right in front of him, and his header was just too close to Raya. There was also a wonderful strike from Caicedo from about 25 yards. Again, Raya did very well to tip it over. And again, Raya did very well when Veltman had a snapshot from a corner. So, Kurtis, there were chances, but Albion perhaps a bit guilty of not taking those chances. Were you having flashbacks, Kurtis, to the 2020-2021 season?
Yes, I was. And I think that's always been our issue, really. The Brighton issue is the sort of goal scoring intent. Sometimes it's kind of lacking. We just miss that little spark on the final third there. And we have to talk about their goalkeeper had like the match of his life. A couple of those opportunities, I feel if it was anybody else might have gone in. And that's just the way it is sometimes. We're not owed goals. We're not guaranteed to get goals in every game. It's a slow moving machine when you get a new manager in. It takes time. You have to oil the cogs, so to speak, and you've just got to get everything working perfectly. And I'm sure once the whole team gets used to this style of play, it will start to fit together, well, and we'll start to score goals.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the January transfer window will be very interesting, because Roberto De Zerbi will be able to pinpoint exact players that he needs to implement his system to its fullest effect. But as I say, it's just worth mentioning there that, it wasn't for lack of trying last night. Yes, at times we were slow, we were off the boil, but we did have some pretty decent chances. And we had some in the second half as well.
Wasn't there a dunk chance as well? Was there?
Yeah, that was in the second half, but he was offside. But again, Raya had a really fantastic game. And actually, I think it was Brian Owen tweeted that in pre-season, Raya played very well for Brentford in the pre-season friendly we had. And he was even more impressive last night. He did make some absolutely fantastic saves. I think you can. So there is certainly room to say, we'll talk about, the Solly March chance in the second half, the free header, he probably should have buried that. If that falls to another player, maybe he does. They do bury it, and I think that Welbeck should have done better from some of the chances he had. Joe, Welbeck needs a goal. I think that's fair to say. We saw some tweets last night of fans calling Welbeck out, if you want to call it that, or jumping on Welbeck's back, as I prefer to call it. it's almost like a mirror image of last year, apart from this time, instead of Enock Mwepu getting all the criticism, it's Danny Welbeck. How badly does Danny need to score a goal for you?
Yeah. A striker that's not scored in 8 games, 9 games now. I don't know how many it is. It's not good. It's not good enough. He'll know that. Roberto De Zerbi will know that. Danny Welbeck isn't a stupid man. He's played for England. He's played for Man United. He's played for Arsenal. He will know that if you're a striker and you don't score goals, it's not good enough. And I find it extremely counterproductive when people are calling him a fraud, or people are saying he's lost it, because he hasn't. He's been an extremely important focal point in our attack. I remember so many tweets after the Fulham game. We miss Danny Welbeck. We miss Danny Welbeck. In the Fulham game, I don't really think we had that many chances, to be honest. Against Tottenham, we had 14. Against Brentford yesterday, we had 21, and that's with Danny Welbeck in the squad. So that extremely important focal point means that we get chances to score goals. As Kurtis said, we are not guaranteed to score goals. We are not entitled to score goals. This is the Premier League. It's the toughest division in the world. And if you're slightly off your game against anyone in this division, you will get punished. And it's as simple as that. And to be calling players out, and to be, I had an altercation with someone this morning on Twitter saying, "Oh, I forgot we're not allowed to critique players." You're allowed to critique players. Absolutely. That's your right as a Brighton supporter. You crack on. You pay your money. You're allowed your opinion. But when it comes to verbal abuse, that's where you draw the line. And I'm sure the players see that. And as I say, it's unbelievably counterproductive. So bloody stop it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and in regards to... Sorry, you carry on.
Okay, let's go.
I was about to say, in regards to verbal abuse as well, it was made prevalent this morning that Ivan Toney got some racial abuse when he woke up this morning, and that is just so disgusting. It's just disgusting.
Worth saying that wasn't a Brighton fan.
No, yeah, I know. That needs to be
either way.
Needs to be said, either way. Yeah. I can't believe people would go out of their way to do that to a human being. It's mad.
Racists gonna racist, unfortunately. No place for it in the 21st century. The 1950s called, they want their outdated opinions back, please. And it's not, I shouldn't say it's an opinion, because it's not an opinion. An opinion is jazz is pretty decent. Blue is a nice color. Racism is what scumbags do. If you're a racist, fuck off. I don't normally swear, but yeah, I'm not here for that. I've lost what I was going to say. What I was going to say was, some people can't tell the difference between critiquing a player and, for want of a better phrase, slagging a player off. I will say it. Danny Welbeck should have scored. Danny Welbeck should have scored against Tottenham. I will say that, and I think he needs to be more clinical. I will say that, but I'm not going to turn around and say he's a fraud, because, as Joe says, when we played Fulham, I was very much in the camp of we look so much better with Danny Welbeck, and I still believe we do. However, I do want to see Danny Welbeck be more clinical. I think that he should have scored that header in the first half, and I do think he probably should have scored in the second half. But it is what it is. As we say, we've got no right to score against anyone. However, I do think that sometimes we just need to be a bit more clinical. As I say, there were shades of 2020, 2021 Potterball about last night's performance, because we were creating chances. We had 2 really good chances, but we just didn't take them. And it cost us in the end. So let's talk about one of those costs, and one of that man, Ivan Toney, because whether or not you like his theatrics, I certainly didn't for the penalty, which we'll talk about in a bit later. But he did score a fantastic back heel, which was a really well taken goal, Joe. However, I'm very much of the opinion that, once again, defensively, we could have done a lot better there. What are your thoughts on that?
It was weak. I feel like, I don't know who it was on the far side. I think Aaron said it was Solly March, but I've got a feeling it was
Trossard and Purvis.
Yeah, I believe Trossard got a slight knock in the face, and sort of went to go down, hoping that he might get the free kick. I feel like that really annoys me, because if you're down on the floor, Brentford aren't going to give a crap, and they're going to burst forward and they're going to create a chance, and then we're one player down. If you've really been smacked in the face, then you've been smacked in the face, but you got up 2 seconds later. And we talk about Brentford's theatrics, so I'm going to say that I don't want to see that from our players as well. I thought it was weak. I thought it was sloppy. Ivan Toney spins far too easily away from Adam Webster, who's a guy that again is under pressure, I think, for his place in the starting lineup. And what you have to do as well is you can't take anything away from the finish of Ivan Toney. The audacity to try that and to get the flick away and know where Sanchez was, it's incredible. Poacher's mind. It's just unbelievable, and that's what we miss in our side. Someone that's got that creativity and would just, make something out of nothing. Because before it happened, I was thinking, okay, Webster's got him. He's got his back to goal. What's going to come of this? And then before I knew it, it was in the back of the net. I just thought it was incredibly weak defending from us.
Yeah, unfortunately so. A lot of people, Kurtis, were saying about how defensively under Roberto De Zerbi, we've been poor. I put it to some people last night, defensively, we've been poor since Fulham, in my opinion. I also thought we were quite shaky at times against Leeds even. What do you make of the defensive? Now, I'm going to ask you this and then I'll come to Joe, because Joe last night in the group chat was very... I wouldn't say critical, but Joe doesn't like the way we play with the back four, as is his right. Do you think this is about formation, or do you think it's about personnel?
I feel like it could be a bit of both. I mean, you've got to think of it this way: when you are losing and you're going through change, it's a matter of you got to think that these players are probably going to be going through stuff in their heads. It's going to be tough, especially when people like Adam Webster or Dunk, they could look back on these performances and think, okay, that wasn't good enough, I've got to do way better in this next match, and then again they might not have a good match in the next game, and this stuff can weigh on them, and I feel like it's a bit of both things. I think it's getting used to a whole new style, and it's just dealing with the fact that you might not be playing very well yourself and just owning up to that in your head. But I think it'll improve. I do believe it'll improve.
So, Joe, as I've just alluded to, defensively we've been shaky, I believe, since Fulham. I think last night was the first time we've played a back four from the start. I think in other games we have transitioned between the 3 and the 4. So same question to you, Joe. Is it the formation? Is it the shape? Or is it the personnel? And if it is the latter, if it is the personnel, is there a way in which we can fix it by rotating?
I'm not sure it's the personnel. Again, that might sound hypocritical of me because I've just said that people didn't play well enough. But I think that the players that we do have the qualities to be better. We know that they can be better. We've seen some unbelievable performances over the last few months, at the end of last season as well. For me, it's formation. I feel like our players know and breathe a 3 at the back, and that can convert to a 5 at the back when under the cosh. I feel like in that system, Adam Webster, Lewis Dunk, people like that know who is where and who has their back if they're in a spot of bother. With a 4 at the back, I feel like if Webster gets in trouble, that's it. The other team have an incredible chance because Purvis is too far up. Dunkey, as amazing as he is, hasn't really got the pace to recover, especially if it's on the opposite side. And for me, Veltman works a lot better as a right-sided centre-back in a 3. I don't think he's an out-and-out right-back. He gives his absolute all. He gives us so much, and I absolutely adore Joel Veltman. but I really feel like we could thrive in a three at the back system with wing backs again, because that's what we saw, so much of last season. And I'm by no means a football manager. I have no knowledge really about how to get systems working, but I just feel like in that system that there would be more cover for when things like mistakes from defenders will happen.
Yeah, I think that's really fair, Joe, because with a three at the back, Adam Webster has license to go on those mazy runs that he does so well. And he did very well against Liverpool to create that third goal. I think it's fair to say that Adam Webster has been underperforming in a back three and a back four, but I think perhaps in a back three, he's got more defensive cover. So when we transitioned to a back four yesterday, he looked perhaps a little bit shakier because he didn't have that protective cover. I put it to the group chat and I'll put it to you now, listeners. Moving forward, I think Webster needs to be dropped just for his own sake as much as anything else. He's a fantastic player. When he's on form, he's brilliant. However, I think he's been very shaky for a couple of games now. Since Leeds, if I'm honest, where I pinpointed a few times, he just didn't look comfortable. So I think we either need to move to stay with the back four, because I think that's the way that Roberto De Zerbi is going to play. And I think either Colwill comes in or Veltman goes into centre back alongside Lewis Dunk, and Tarek Lamptey comes in at right back, because we talk about how we need to add more pace to that sort of counter attack, if you like, or when we're playing out from the back. And who better to get us up the pitch than a marauding right back, Tarek Lamptey? Obviously, questions.
I feel like it's a really good opportunity for Tarek as well, because he fell out of favour under Graham Potter, and now there's a new manager in, and he's, I hope, back to full fitness. Obviously played for his country as well over the international break, or was at least introduced to his country's international setup. Is a really, really fantastic opportunity for him, and I agree, Tom. If he's given a chance, I really hope he thrives and uses the Tarek Lamptiness that we all know and love.
Let's certainly hope so. I don't think he's looked the same since his injury, but perhaps moving to a more traditional right back role instead of right wing back might actually, it might sound mad, but might actually help him, because there'll be less emphasis on him being out on the wing on his own, because he'll have that player in front of him and he can overlap and do, right back things, similar to what Bruno used to do back in the day. So there was just one last thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the halftime, and that is when it got a bit tasty on the old touchlines, Kurtis. Thomas Frank wouldn't give Joel Veltman the ball back, and they were like having a bit of a squabble, and then Roberto De Zerbi came over and was like, "Don't touch my players," and it all got a bit heated. I was going to ask you who'd win in a fight, Frank or De Zerbi, but I'm not going to ask that, because I think we all know who's going to win there.
De Zerbi.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you then, Kurtis, how good is it to see that passion on the touchline? We've seen it in a couple of our games under Roberto already, but for me, it's really nice to see a lovely, passionate streak coming from Roberto. He did get a yellow card, and I think it's only a short matter of time before he is eventually sent to the stands. Reminds me of a certain Gus Poyet, personally. But Kurtis, what is your opinion on the touchline theatrics?
I mean, we knew about his fiery nature, shall we say, before he even came in. So when it happened, I was like, "Oh, he's going to clean his clock. Watch this!" It was fantastic. Again though, it shows passion. It shows that he cares, and like his post-match comments when he was like, I don't know, I just don't like other managers putting their hands on my players, and that's fair. That's completely fair and warranted. But also, if I was going to take a bit more of a professional stance on this, you have to say, like, it's maybe not the best thing for two, Premier League managers to be doing, to be beefing on the touchline, but I think it was quite funny.
Yeah, I thought it was as well. And all the players getting off the bench as well. It was just, it was what it was. But then again, we saw echoes of Frank's behaviour on the pitch as well, because especially in the second half, which we'll talk about in a bit. The Brentford players were going down so quickly, so easily. Time wasting from about the 46th minute, which was awful. But before we talk about that, Joe, at halftime you said bring Matoma on, and Zerbi must have heard you, Joe, because Matoma came on for Pervis Estupinian at halftime. Now I am of the opinion that Pervis was a tad unlucky to come off at halftime, but as much as as great as it was to see Matoma, but do you think Pervis was a tad unlucky? Because I thought he had a reasonably decent first half.
Yeah. First of all, worldwide exclusive. Yeah, I do actually have Roberto De Zerbi's number, and I gave him a phone call and said, yeah, Matoma's your man. And so any tactical advice you want to give to Zerbi, drop it in the comments, and I'll be sure to let him know. I did think Pervis was unlucky. As I stated on the group chat, I thought he played relatively well, especially going forwards. And again, that's why I want to see a back three or a back five, if you like, with Purvis at wing back, because I feel like he can give us a lot going forwards. And I'd love to see him on the overlap with Leandro Trossard. Something that we saw really, really nicely at the start of the season was the overlap between Pascal Gross and Solly March, especially in the pre-season friendly against Espanyol, I think it was. It worked wonderfully well, and really unlucky. I thought it would have been fairer to bring Webster off and have Veltman drop into central defence, and then Solly maybe at right back, or however he wanted to work it. Again, I don't claim to be a manager, but it was nice to see Matoma come on and give us what he gives us.
Yeah, there were reports, Kurtis, at the end of the game. Again, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but while we're talking about Matoma, reports at the end of the game that Matoma left the ground in crutches. How disappointing will it be to see him injured after having some very exciting cameos?
Very, because I feel like after a performance like that, he might be in line with like an actual start, you know? So to hear that he was injured, hopefully it's nothing too bad. Hopefully it's something that he just needs a bit of a rest for. I mean, I feel bad for him ultimately, because, you know, when you've waited that long and he to come on early and make your impact, shall we say. Again, I just hope that it's nothing too serious and he can bounce back quickly.
Yeah, fingers crossed. As I say, his cameos have been really exciting, and he's a very exciting player, and everyone is clamoring and trying to get him into that starting 11, which is proving very difficult when you've got Trossard and March who are playing very well. And as we've seen, Solly March has been very much used as a utility player. I think in every single game we've played under Roberto De Zerbi, he's played at left back at some point. So yeah. But in true Brighton fashion, we do make a positive start to the second half, but we certainly give Brentford a few gifts. Sanchez passed straight to Tony, and Dunk almost did one of his classic chest backs with not enough on it, which Brentford almost pounced upon. Now, Joe, De Zerbi ball, you have to be so precise, so precise. And my big bugbear this season has been we have been really sloppy on the ball, whether it was under Potter or whether it's under De Zerbi. Is this lack of precision hurting the Albion, especially when our build-up play now needs to be so intricate?
Yeah, it's really frustrating because you can't put your finger on why we're so weak on the ball and why, we struggle to string sort of 10, 15 passes together as soon as we get over the halfway line. Like, we can't even get Sanchez to pass directly to a defender, and it goes to an opposition. And on another day, that causes us a real problem. It's far too casual. I feel like the players need an extra gear from somewhere, as Aaron said on the group chat yesterday. And I don't know where that comes from, and it is slightly concerning. And we've got a huge opportunity to put things right on Tuesday. Probably gutting for Matoma that Tuesday does come that quickly, considering he left the ground on crutches. So that's a bit concerning as well, that we'll be down our impact man from the bench, but then gives opportunity to Sarmiento, maybe even to Enciso, who we're yet to see in the Premier League. And I don't know whether it comes from complacency, the sloppiness on the ball. I won't get dropped, so I can take an extra 2 seconds, and the extra 2 seconds in the Premier League is everything. Frank pointed out that his tactic was to beat Brighton to the second balls, and to beat Brighton to the knockdowns, and win those 50-50 battles, and that's what Brentford did, and it completely knocked us off of our stride. And when you really think about it, it was just 2 sets of tactics, and the Brentford tactic worked.
Yeah, it did. And, I think I said it last week and I'll say it again. When I went on a Bournemouth podcast and they talked about the Zerbi ball and they talked about playing it out from the back, they asked about whether our defenders could do that. And I said my main concern was whether Robert Sanchez could do that. And he's always got a mistake in him, as Robert Sanchez. I think he's got at least one mistake in him per game. And when you're a goalkeeper, that's not great, but he is still young. So let's hope he learns from that. Now, I'm just going to talk, Kurtis, about what Joe just said about finding that extra gear, because I think we can all agree that at the moment, the starting 11 picks itself. And then you always know that, you can always guarantee that Matoma is going to come on. But when you look at our bench, what players that are on our bench that can change a game? We talked about it when we spoke after the Spurs game about what player can you bring on that's going to change the game. Someone on Twitter pointed out, I can't remember who it was, but someone on Twitter pointed out last night that once again, we struggle to break teams down who are sitting in a low block, which is what Brentford did at large parts in the second half, which was a thing under Potter as well. So let's not forget that. But who on our bench, Kurtis, can really change that game apart from Matoma?
It's tricky, really, because we're not like a Man City. We don't have these 90 million players on our bench that can immediately change a game like that. But I feel like we have some good individuals there that could maybe bring some pace in, just some intent, some hunger, I think, because I feel like there could be definitely some complacency, I feel there. And I agree with what Joe was saying about not being able to string passing together. Some of the passes yesterday was shocking at times. They couldn't even pass to people in front of them at certain points. And I'm not going to single out any individual player, because the whole team, this was yesterday, had issues. But I feel like someone like Tarek, or someone with that speed and intent, I feel like could be helpful. But again, like I'm not sure who's going to be the person or individuals to get us going. Stoke the fires, so to speak.
We talk about pace, but we've also on the bench at the moment got a fantastic player that has unbelievable amounts of experience in Adam Lallana. And I feel like, honestly, I might get lynched for this, but when he came on yesterday, I thought he gave us a fantastic level of professionalism, amazing leadership, and everything sort of centered around him, with the chances that were being created late on.
He almost scored a goal as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did have a chance, and it was a really difficult chance as well. And people were like, "Oh, Lallana didn't score that," but he's almost falling over and trying to header the ball into the top corner. Who's going to score that other than Lewandowski or Haaland, or So yeah, we talk about pace, but then we also have to think about the experience that we can bring in as well. And I feel like an Adam Lallana with a young Enciso, or Adam Lallana with a young Jeremy Sarmiento, who can coach him through the game and bring those players into the game, which he does fantastically well, and could really work for us. So it'll be really interesting to see how Zerbi works that.
Yeah, and it's not just pace in terms of raw pace, it's pace of mind as well, pace of thought, which I think Adam Lallana does perhaps better than almost anyone else. So yesterday, I mean, again, Joe, I fully agree. I know that Lana gets a lot of stick from some sections of our fan base, but I'd be almost inclined to start him over Pascal Gross next weekend.
And that's all because his FIFA card has got less than 50 pace, probably. That is not, honestly, that is the level that people judge players. Oh, you've got a 74 rated card on FIFA, he's not good enough. Shut up. It's ridiculous.
But what I like about Adam is you can always see him. He's always shouting something to someone, or he's always, pointing. He's always doing something. So he's sort of like a de facto manager on the pitch, and I think that's a really good thing to have in the starting 11.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you look at our, the first few games of the season, he started the first 3, and we looked really solid. So yeah, for me, I'd probably try and get him in the starting 11 for our game against Forest. Because I think it will just add, as you say, that extra level of professionalism, that extra, bit of ingenuity in terms of moving the ball forward. Because I don't think you could argue with that in what he can bring in terms of his qualities. But let's talk about the nail in the coffin, as it were, Joe. The Brentford penalty from a corner. Tony has handfuls of Veltman's shirt. Nothing's done about that. But Veltman clumsily into the back of Tony, who hits the deck as if he's been shot. Now, I don't think, Joe, we can argue that it wasn't a penalty. And it might seem like a really cheap thing to go after Tony for. But why does he have to be so blooming theatric?
It's just a thing across, not even just Brentford squad, across the whole Premier League. You see it in every team, even our team, with players, play acting and trying to get the referee on their side. And it's a part of football that I really, really don't like. We did see it a lot from Brentford yesterday. I point out as well, towards the end of the game, one of the Brentford players winning a throw on and celebrating in front of his fans, and McAllister just going through the back of him. And then also there was another moment, the same player, Canos, I believe his name is, he got hit on the leg and he went down holding his face. I'm not sure. Is there a nerve in your leg that links to your face?
I don't know.
What's going on there? That is just ridiculous.
Quite funny, really, because Thomas Frank's been really vocal about play acting and really vocal about players going down to try and buy time. And yet his team did that in spades yesterday.
Well, it's all right if it's working for you, then, isn't it, Mr. Frank? And before the game, when we were watching the build up to it, I had really high comments for Thomas Frank. Me and my wife were watching, and his pre-match interview was on, and I said I really respect this manager. But it's certainly gone down after yesterday with what he had his team doing and his theatrics on the sidelines as well. And I don't want to see it in the game. I won't talk about the penalty because, it was a nailed-on penalty. Joel Veltman admitted that. He admits that he can do better. And that's all we can ask from our players. If they have messed up, then they come out and say, I can do better than that. And let's see if they can on Tuesday.
Yeah, honesty is very important in football, as it is in life in general. So I suppose that brings us to our post-game sort of chat then, guys. Kurtis,
Thank God for that.
Do you think, Kurtis, it's fair to say that what Brighton lacked perhaps more than anything else yesterday was belief?
It definitely felt like that at times. Yeah, it did because we were knocking on the door at several occasions. I think we had like 21 shots or something like that. And how many of them were on target? 7 or something, right? Yeah. But I just think it's also a case of doing too much sometimes. I feel like, especially in that final third, it sort of felt like we were trying to be a bit too clever with too much passing, and that's just my opinion. But I just feel like we just need to settle down a bit in those situations and just calm down.
Tom, I just want to point out that I absolutely love it that you always have a theme to what shirts are behind you based on the game or based on the current times. I really respect that. So
Respect the shirt game. Check out Exiled Seagull and Albion Obsessed on Instagram to see our daily shirt content.
Plug in your own stuff. Shameful. Shameful.
Yeah, I know, mate. But you got to do what you got to do. No, Curtis, I do agree with what you say, because I'm going to drop another IT Crowder quote in for you. The problem with Brighton is they always try and walk it in. And as I said earlier, it was just shades of 2020, 2021. We were trying to be too intricate at times, too clever, and we just couldn't finish. And it was a really frustrating performance. However, Joe, we were never going to see the full Roberto De Zerbi experience after 3 games, were we?
What? No, come on now. Surely it's an instant thing. Surely this is a game of Football Manager, right? Where you can just like cheat code it and win the Premier League within four months. Like, come on now. No, it was never going to be that. Yeah, this is what it is, and let's continue having a great time. This is, as I said before, and I'm going to be boring people. This is the Premier League. I don't care who you're playing against. You know, a newly promoted side. Yeah, we got schooled by them in West London, Fulham. Brentford, who some people are tipping for relegation. Whether you like it or not, they outfought us and out-tacticianed us. Whether that's a word, I don't know, but it is now. Put it in the Oxford Dictionary. We've got Forest on Tuesday. I'm shitting myself for that game, I have to say. Because it's one, again, that fans are going to be so entitled that, we're going to win this game. The Zerbi ball, we're going to see what he's made of. It's going to be great. We're going to beat him 5-0. No. It's going to be another unbelievably difficult game. Steve Cooper, I believe, has just signed a new contract as well. So they're going to have all the fans behind him. The squad that they've put together, whether you like it or not, surely we'll start performing at some point, and you just know that's going to be against us. And as I say, I'm really nervous for Tuesday. We just have to really hope that De Zerbi gets into the players tomorrow and Monday in training, because I'm sure they've had a day off today to take a good look at themselves and see where we go.
'Tis the Brighton way. Now, Curtis, considering we didn't play, I don't think, all that badly, was it our inability to deal with a very physical Ivan Toney? Do you think that, and perhaps coupled with Raya having a worldie, our ultimate downfall? I mean, luckily, guys, it's not like we're going to be coming across any other really physical players anytime soon. I mean, Haaland on Saturday. So do you think we just need to learn how to deal with that?
Tom, that's a really nasty cough you've got there.
I know.
Yeah,
really,
I'll get that
really
looked
nasty.
at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Norway.
But to answer your question, I just feel I don't feel like it's an Ivan Toney issue, like that he I just feel like it's more we just need to sit back and take a look at what we're doing wrong and how we can fix it, because there are some games where we've come up against people who are a lot more tricky to play against, and we've done so much better, so I don't feel like it's a specific player issue, facing a certain individual. I just feel like it's a team issue at the moment, and I feel like we'll iron out the creases, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, do you think it's perhaps? I mean, because there are sections of the fan base that are frustrated. Do you think it's perhaps more frustrating to see us in the last few games? Because the new manager's come in, he's got new ideas, he's trying to get the team to play a certain way. But as I say, he's come in, partway through a season where before the previous manager left, it felt like we were on the verge of something special. Do you think that's playing into people's frustrations a little bit?
Yeah, the timing, as we said about Graham Potter, and not to bring this up again, because I feel like we've all done our healing over the last few weeks, few months. The timing stank, and it was really hard to take. And if it's hard to take for us, it must have been hard to take for the players and the staff and the board. So I'm sure for what feels like at the moment, there's definitely a low mood throughout the club. I see it in the players' faces. And I know we joked about this last season. Oh, the players aren't smiling; they're not having a good time. But yeah, it's one of those things where you just sense something, and I hope that something's sorted out soon. And we give Roberto De Zerbi the time, and the fans give him the time as well, because I feel like he deserves that. It's never going to be, or at least for the next few months, as good as what Graham Potter was giving us. And we just have to hope that things work out. But yeah, I just think it's a bit silly for fans to expect that things are going to be fine and dandy when there's been such a huge change.
And I think that's just the thing, isn't it? I mean, I get why fans might be a little bit disappointed, because, as I say, shades of what it was like a few seasons ago. But I think, I think there's a difference between being a bit disappointed, which I think is okay, because we haven't played that. We just need to be a bit more clinical. So I get being disappointed, but then you've got some small sections of our fan base, and again, I am going to stress it is small. They're on social media, which again I will stress is not necessarily a good barometer of what the average Brighton and Hove Albion fan believes and thinks. But there are some fans after 3 games who are already calling for De Zerbi to go. I think that's borderline insanity. I think these people need a fucking reality check. I told you I was going to swear, because it took Graham Potter 3 seasons, the best part of 3 seasons, to get his style implemented. And a lot of people are like, oh, we haven't scored in 2 games now. Graham Potter last season, our best ever season in the Premier League, we went through 2 really long periods of not scoring. It was only until the last 2 months where we had that run from like Arsenal to the end of the season where Graham Potter things just seemed to click. But before that, there were times where we weren't scoring. There were times where we looked shaky defensively. And that was after, 2.5 seasons of Potter ball. It's going to take Roberto De Zerbi more than 3 games to implement a style of football. It's going to take him more than 3 games to get to know his players and know their strengths. So anyone who's calling for De Zerbi to go, anyone who's even merely suggesting that as soon as De Zerbi's come in, the football is now negative, you need to give yourself a long, hard look in the mirror and maybe, I don't know, have a good long sleep, because your brain is not working. Because my God, you need a reality check and a bit of perspective. If in a year's time, De Zerbi ball is causing us lots of issues and we've lost lots of games, then fair enough. But 3 games in, Jesus wept.
You have been told by Teacher Tom.
No,
and that's by the way, those 3 games, that's a draw and 2 losses as well. It's not like we were completely thrashed for 3 games.
I do think, I mean, I've already said, I think we've been a bit shaky since Fulham, and I think that the result against Leicester, a poor Leicester side, and the first 20 minutes against Liverpool have sort of put people into this sort of maybe false sense of security. I think the first half against Leicester wasn't great, and I think what saved us there was how bad Leicester were. We should have been out of sight against Liverpool in the first half an hour. We weren't. We allowed them to come back into it. You could argue that there was a lot of quality on show. But I think the problem is when you look at games solely in isolation, you only look at a small part of the jigsaw, as it were. There are so many different pieces of the puzzle. And I think that things have not been great at the back since Potter. And I think that, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, look at the Newcastle game. We had so many chances, and Pope had it pulled off worldie after worldie, but we still didn't score. Leeds, we only scored 1 goal. So I think people just need to get a bit of perspective. And as Joe's already alluded to, we've got no right to beat anyone. We've got no right to score. We just have to just sort of believe in the process and give it more time. I can't believe that after 3 games, there are some fans, again, I'm going to stress a minority of fans, already calling for De Zerbi to go. It's just bamboozling.
I feel like our social media fan base are turning very much into the people that we claim to hate. And we claim to hate the entitled top 6, top 4, whatever you want to call them, fans of Liverpool, United, especially United, Arsenal, who are just, as I said before, so unbelievably entitled. Oh, we should be beating a team like Brentford. We should be beating a team like Nottingham Forest. Sorry, no, that is absolutely not the case. And if you feel that way, then as Tom said, you really need a reality check, because we're in the best division in the world. Yes, for what we've built and for what we're doing, we expect good results. But on the day, anyone can beat anyone. And that is the simplicity of the Premier League. So go back and look at previous Premier League seasons before we were even in the Premier League, and you'll see huge results from smaller teams beating bigger teams hammering smaller teams. It's just what happens. So yeah, it's not a concern for me.
Yeah. I really hate being this guy. Really hate it. But some of these people on Twitter, if Twitter was around during some of the darker days of the Withdean years, you would have bloody wet yourself. Because my God, if you think what you're seeing now is bad, just be thankful you didn't have to witness some of the dross that happened in the 90s and the noughties. And I don't like being that guy. I hate that gatekeeping nonsense. I really do. And I know I've been really critical of people who say things like, "Oh, but it's better than it was back at the Withdean." Blah, blah, blah. But I think again, it's just that perspective. Come on,
Tom was born at the Withdean.
I was born there, even though Brighton didn't play football in 1989 at the Withdean. I was born there.
Tom was sired between the goalposts.
It's true. It's true. So less about me ranting about foolish, fickle football fans. I love that alliteration, by the way. Let's talk about Tuesday. Let's talk about Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are in a bit of a rut. They managed to get a point against Villa. On paper, Joe, you've already alluded to, it would perhaps be fair to say that Brighton would be expected to get a result. However, it would be the most Brighton thing in the world to lose on Tuesday night. How do you think the game is going to pan out?
I think it's going to be a really edgy affair. It's going to be really cagey because the fans are going to be on tenterhooks. I'm sure of it. I think the players are going to feel that. I don't want to be this dramatic, and tell me if I am being this dramatic, Tom. But it feels like it's going to be a Brighton versus Cardiff type game under Houghton. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone's expecting us to win. And I know it's not at the end of the season, so it doesn't mean as much. But it's just going to be one of those. I think that as I said earlier, there's such a low mood around the fan base that the first mistake a Brighton player makes, they're going to lose us. I feel. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I just think it's going to be one of those games where you just want to hide behind your seat.
Oh, I'm having flashbacks now. I'd forgotten about that game. I say forgotten, I'd been put into the recesses of my mind.
Well, at least I didn't say Bournemouth.
God, that was dire, wasn't it? I think it will. I think you're right, Joe. I think it's going to be cagey. I think there's going to be a lot of tension. And I think that the fans will need to play their part. I think there needs to be just a sea of positivity in the ground, because the players will be feeling that they haven't necessarily performed as best they can. Roberto De Zerbi will be looking for his first win as Brighton manager. So hopefully the Brighton fans can be loud, they can be proud, we can sing Mwepu's name around the ground, we can really roar our team on to a result. And I will take a 1-0 win right now if you offered it to me. 1-0, I'd take that clean sheet and I would take the 3 points. Kurtis, do you agree with myself and Joe? Do you think that it will be a cagey affair? How do you think Nottingham Forest will set up to play against us?
I'm going to read from the very typical Kurtis script here, but I'm confident for some reason. We'll see if I'm eating my words afterwards, but I feel like games like this, performances like this, sometimes make you step back and take a look at yourselves and realize, okay, well, this is not good enough. It's not good enough at all. So hopefully we go into Nottingham Forest with a lot of passion, a lot of fire in our bellies, and this goes for the fans too. You know, I agree with what you guys were saying. We need to be that 12th man. You know, we need to be getting them going and stuff like that. And I feel like Nottingham are going to be very much up for it too, because they're going to look at our last few results and feel like we might be able to get something here. You know, and yeah, I do feel like it's going to be a cagey affair, but I'm confident. I'm confident for it.
Well, thank you very much, Kurtis, for your confidence. I'm not going to use the phrase must win because that's nonsense. However, I do think 3 points will alleviate a lot of tension, especially as after Forest, we play Man City. And I think that we can all agree that getting anything out of that game, we will need to be at 173% of our best. So a good 3 points on Tuesday will do a lot to alleviate any tension in the fan base, and we can move on, as I'm sure Roberto Zerbi would like to do. So before we go off air, guys, can I just get a quick score prediction from you and goal scorers? Joe, what do you think the score on Tuesday night will be, my friend?
Can I make a very premature big prediction right now? I think we're not going to get a result in our next 2 games, whether that be a draw or a loss. And I think our next win will be against Chelsea at the Amex.
Oh, I'd be here for that.
Just imagine it. No, but thinking about the game solely on Tuesday, I want to be positive, so I'm going to say a 2-0 win for the Albion.
Who do you think is going to score those goals, Joe?
Robert Sanchez and Gully.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
No, Danny Welbeck and Trossard.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Kurtis, what are your score predictions, please?
I want to say 2-0 as well, but I probably going to say 2-1. I think one of them will be scored by Zerbi himself with like boxing gloves on. He'll like punch the ball in the goal like that. No, but I think probably the same goal scorers that Joe has said. I feel like that's a sensible answer.
Very nice, very nice. As I said, I'd like a 1-0 victory with a goal coming from Danny Welbeck, because I think he just needs to score. However, I think it's far more realistic that we'll perhaps, I think we'll struggle to keep a clean sheet, because we've struggled to do that for the last few games. 10 goals conceded in 5 games. So I think that's the main issue that we need to sort of deal with. So I'm going to go with 2-1, similar to you, Kurtis, and I'm going to say our goals will come from Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister. That's who I'm going to say is the most likely to score on Tuesday night.
And guys, don't forget your Zambian flags.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazon, click on the Prime thing at the top and get your Amazon flags delivered, ready for the game.
And be loud and roar his
loud,
name,
be
everyone.
proud. And give all of the love to our Zambian wonder man, Enock Mwepu.
Yeah, that's what a lovely way to end the show. But don't forget, guys, to let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think the score will be against Nottingham Forest? I'd love to hear what you have to say about the formation, back 3 or back 4. And regardless of what that formation, who are you going to pick to play it, with Webster looking very shaky indeed? And also let us know who you think from the bench could be our impact man if Matoma misses Tuesday night. As ever, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already, wherever you may be, whenever you may be. We'll see you next time. Take care.